Dr. Newten.
Dr. Newten.
Dr. Newten.
Dr. Newten. Hello Dr. Newten. You seem to be very happy. May I know why?
I got to know you were appreciated for your so-called fantastic presentation on arrhythmias. I too spent last few days reading ventricular arrhythmias, and today I completed reading them. I too am ready for my fantastic presentation now.
Really? I don't believe you. You are just saying this to make me feel jealous.
No, I am not. I can share with you what I know.
Please don't. I know that everyone knows that the impulse for supraventricular arrhythmias originate in the atria, either from sinoatrial node, the atrial myometrium, the AV node, or within the His bundle, and the impulse for ventricular arrhythmias originate from one of the ventricles. I don't want to see your acting skills where you usually try to fake knowing things. I will ask you some specific questions. If you answer them, I will agree that you are ready for your presentation.
Okay. Challenge accepted.
Question number 1. What is premature ventricular beat?
That's easy. Premature ventricular beat, also referred to as a premature ventricular contraction, is a single ventricular beat that falls earlier than the next anticipated supraventricular beat.
Easy, is it? Question number 2. Why are the QRS complexes on ECG white during ventricular arrhythmias?
Conduction through the ventricular myocardium is slower than activation of the ventricles over the Purkinje system. Therefore, the QRS complexes are wide during ventricular arrhythmias. These QRS complexes are typically greater than 0.12 seconds.
Impressive. Question number 3. What do you mean by unifocal premature ventricular contractions and multifocal premature ventricular contractions?
Premature ventricular contractions that originate from the same focus will have the same QRS morphology and are referred to as unifocal. Premature ventricular contractions that originate from different ventricular sites of different QRS morphologies and are referred to as multifocal.
Question number 4. Let me see if you can answer this. What is the difference between ventricular bigeminy and ventricular couplets?
A condition where every second beat is a ventricular beat is called ventricular bigeminy. 2 consecutive ventricular beats are called ventricular couplets. 3 or more consecutive ventricular beats is called ventricular tachycardia. I know you didn't ask about ventricular tachycardia. I am just saving your energy.
Ha ha. Funny. Question number 5. Can you explain to me what the difference between ventricular tachycardia and idioventricular rhythm is?
Ventricular tachycardia is 3 or more consecutive beats at a rate faster than 100 beats per minute. 3 or more consecutive beats at slower rates are called idioventricular rhythm.
Okay. Question number 6. What is the difference between idioventricular rhythm and accelerated idioventricular rhythm?
Typically, idioventricular rhythm has a rate of less than 50 beats per minute. When the rate is between 50 to 100 beats per minute, it is referred to as accelerated idioventricular rhythm.
Question number 7. Is there any classification of ventricular tachycardia based on their duration?
Ventricular tachycardia that terminates spontaneously within 30 seconds is designated non-sustained ventricular tachycardia. Ventricular tachycardia that persists for more than 30 seconds is called sustained ventricular tachycardia. Not only that, ventricular tachycardia that are terminated by active interventions like administration of an intravenous medications or delivering a shock from defibrillator etc. are also grouped under sustained ventricular tachycardia.
The questions are going to get tougher now. Question number 8. What do you mean by monomorphic ventricular tachycardia and polymorphic ventricular tachycardia?
Monomorphic ventricular tachycardia has the same appearing QRS complexes from beat to beat, indicating that each beat likely originates from the same focus. Polymorphic ventricular tachycardia has a continually changing QRS morphology indicating a changing ventricular activation foci.
Question number 9. Torsade de pant.
Haha. Nice accent. The term torsade de pant is derived from French and translates as twisting of peaks. This refers to the morphology of the QRS complexes seen on ECG that seem to twist around an imaginary baseline. Torsade de pant may resolve spontaneously or it can also lead to ventricular fibrillation and death.
Well, you brought this on yourself. Question number 10. Tell me, what is ventricular fibrillation and ventricular flutter?
Ventricular fibrillation is the most commonly identified arrhythmia of cardiac arrest. The ventricles suddenly attempt to contract at rates of up to 500 beats per minute. Ventricular fibrillation has continuous irregular activation with no discrete QRS complexes. This rapid and irregular electrical activity renders the ventricles unable to contract in a synchronized manner, resulting in chaotic irregular deflections of varying amplitude in ECG. Heart rate is usually between 150 to 500 per minute. The heart is no longer an effective pump and blood pressure immediately drops. Unless advanced life support is rapidly instituted, this rhythm is invariably fatal. In prolonged ventricular fibrillation, initially coarse ventricular fibrillation with high amplitude waveform becomes fine ventricular fibrillation with low amplitude waveform. This ultimately degenerates into asystole due to progressive depletion of myocardial energy stores. Very rapid monomorphic ventricular tachycardia with heart rates greater than 200 beats per minute is a sinusoidal appearance that is characterized by regular, large oscillations. This is called ventricular flutter. It is not possible to distinguish the QRS complex from the T wave in ventricular flutter. Electrolyte disturbances like hypokalemia, drugs like tricyclic antidepressants and severe global myocardial ischemia are the common causes. The rhythm, if not treated, may subsequently degenerate into ventricular fibrillation. And, did you know? The ECG looks identical when viewed upside down in ventricular flutter.
Well, I really need to say this now.
What?
You are ready for your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Newten.
Newton and